color gem requirements are a pretty standard part of Crash Bandicoot, and while it's a common scenario in any Crash game to reach a path you can't enter because you don't have the right gem, it's by far at its most prominent in the very first game. Hell, the first island is composed almost entirely of levels that you quite literally cannot get every box in on first visit because you just don't have the right color gems that early on. But what if I told you that there was a way to fully clear these levels on first visit without needing any colored gems? As far-fetched as it may sound, speedrunners have actually found ways to bypass almost all of these required revisits, taking the intended 9 revisits and reducing them to just 3. So let's go over the history of how these skips came to be, and how exactly they're done. Before we begin, let's break down what exactly the 100% requirements for Crash Bandicoot 1 are. Progressing through the game is very simple. Reaching the end of a level unlocks the next one, and each level contains a certain number of crates. Breaking every crate in a level without dying rewards you with a gem. Unlike its sequels, the crates and bonus rounds don't count for the total crate requirement of a level, so these can mostly be avoided. The 2 exceptions are the Cortex bonus rounds in Sunset Vista and Jaws of Darkness. While the crates in these bonuses aren't needed, completing them does reward you with keys that unlock 2 extra levels, Whole Hog and Fumbling in the Dark. You need 20 clear gems to reach the end of the Great Hall and unlock the true ending, and on top of these clear gems are 6 colored gems: green, red, blue, orange, yellow, and purple. These gems are rewarded to you for breaking every crate in 6 specific levels, and acquiring them unlocks special platforms that allow you to access more crates in prior levels. Jungle Rollers requires the green gem from the Lost City. The Great Gate and Lights Out both require the yellow gem from the lab. Upstream requires the orange gem from Generator Room. Rolling Stones and Cortex Power require the blue gem from Toxic Waste. Native Fortress and Road to Nowhere require the red gem from Slippery Climb, and Boulder Dash requires the purple gem from Lights Out. As a side note, there are 2 additional colored gem paths, a blue gem path in Jaws of Darkness and a green gem path in Castle Machinery. However, both of these levels occur after the levels with their respective colored gems, and in the case of Castle Machinery, taking this path skips the level entirely, which has no use in a 100% speedrun. But these 2 levels aside, let's see how speedrunners manage to eliminate almost all of these required revisits. The first 2 skips we'll be going over are about as old as Crash Bandicoot speedrunning itself. They've been implemented in 100% runs since their earliest documentation in 2012, well before my own entry into the scene. The first of these 2 skips is within the game's second level, Jungle Rollers. Normally, you need the green gem from the Lost City in order to carry you up to a higher part of this structure located in the middle of the level. Up here you'll find an arrow crate that can bounce you up to an even higher section containing 3 hidden crates. But with the use of invincibility gained from triple masks, and by lining yourself up in the right spot and jumping at the right time, you can actually land on top of the wall of crates present in this structure. From there, you can jump onto the edge right above these crates. From this point on, the camera doesn't follow you, so you have to do the rest of the movement blind. But from here you can jump into the arrow crate and bounce up to the top, where the invincibility will take out all 3 of the crates. And with that, you can complete Jungle Rollers without ever coming back to it. The next skip is in the Great Gate, the level immediately after Jungle Rollers, and it was probably the first skip that was discovered. At the very end of the level, you can see that there's a path on the opposite side of the portal. I think you can see where this is going. Normally, you need the yellow gem obtained all the way in the lab at the end of the game to form a bridge over the portal across to the other side and reach an entire hidden section of the level. But with very precise movement, you can actually jump around the edges of the portal and reach the other side without being whisked away with a vortex and out of the level. The earliest known footage of this skip being done was uploaded on April 28, 2012 by veteran Crash speedrunner Rabini. The thing with this skip though, and the reason I'm talking about it after Jungle Rollers, is that this setup sucks. There's extremely little room for error, and more often than not, you'll find yourself either hitting the end of level trigger or simply dying from overshooting the jump. This was without a doubt the most common reset point of early Crash Bandicoot 100% speedruns. That is, until 2015, when a user named Shoddy found a much more consistent and much easier strat. This huge wall, or I guess it's probably the aforementioned Great Gate, doesn't actually extend infinitely into the sky, and by bouncing off this turtle right before the end portal, spending a mask to damage abuse on this spike right next to it, and then pressing up and diagonal on your controller for a very brief moment, you can actually stand on top of this wall. From there you can simply walk across the wall and drop off of it once you've reached the other side. Alright, so I have a bit of a confession. This next skip isn't really a skip so much as it's an advantage born from a version difference. You You may have noticed that on most of the Crash 1 footage I use, I'm playing the Japanese version of the game. This isn't an aesthetic choice. The Japanese version of Crash 1 has a plethora of differences from the North American version, and one extremely important difference is the placement of two colored gems. The green gem is normally contained in the Island 2 level, the Lost City, but in the Japanese version they moved it a bit earlier to be contained in Island 1's Hog Wild. This isn't the part that's important though. The next level we'll be discussing that has a required revisit is Road to Nowhere, also on Island 2. This level requires the red gem, which on the North American version of the game is contained in Slippery Climb all the way on Island 3, but in the Japanese version they also moved this gem. To where exactly? You guessed it, the Lost City. This is huge because the Lost City comes before Road to Nowhere, so on the Japanese version, and only on the Japanese version, you can have the red gem before ever setting foot in Road to Nowhere. This means you only have to complete the level once, whereas on every other version of the game you would have to come back. This one innocuous version difference is almost single-handedly the reason that the Japanese version is optimal for 100% speedruns. The next skip on the menu takes us all the way to the Island 3 level, Cortex Power. Normally, you need the blue gem from Toxic Waste just 2 levels later in order to cross to this left path and acquire the crates within it. This skip actually has quite a long history of its development, and I distinctly remember observing for years as it evolved into its current form. The earliest traces of a potential Cortex Power skip can be dated back to this tool-assisted speedrun, or TAS for short, of the level by renowned Crash Tasser Pirohiko, uploaded on December 15th, 2012 by veteran Crash 1 runner Kane of Pocky. Not long after, on January 1st, 2013, Rabini uploaded a video of him doing the skip in real time, but it was deemed impractical in actual runs. It wasn't until 2016 when the current method was figured out by Crash 1 legend Kojiro CTR, or Koji for short. There's a specific part of this wall where Crash can stand on if he spins. From that spot you can very quickly jump and spin to rise up to the top of the wall and onto the ceiling. From there, you walk left for a little bit and then move the camera down by walking down a bit. The camera will lock into place and Crash will reappear on the other side. Simple, right? Well, getting in is the easy part. The harder part is getting out, and requires the use of an advanced technique known as the submarine jump, or sub-jump. In Crash 1, if you spin off of a ledge, there's a 10-frame window after the spin ends where Crash can jump as if he was on the ground. Just like when you get in, there's a spot on this wall at the end of the path that Crash can stand on if he spins on it. From there, you can fall off of it and use a sub-jump to reach the other side and finish the level. The problem? This specific edge, for the longest time, was believed to be random. It didn't matter what you did. Some runs just came to die at this jump. I remember watching for years as pace after pace after pace just came to a screeching halt. It seemed like this skip was just destined to be a coin toss. But then, on July 27th, 2018, a tasser known as the 8-Bit Beast discovered a 100% consistent setup. I'll let the video speak for itself.
This is a quick video to explain a setup for the last little bit of Cortex Power's revisit skip. So basically you're running down into this blue pipey bit and then you just run straight to the right, and then the difference here is you want to go down a bit, so about that much. And then what you can do is you want to hold up left, but so you don't accidentally press up or left a little bit before you hold up left, you can press pause, hold up left, and then unpause. And then we jump and spin into the wall. And you notice that I got hooked onto the wall and clipped there. That meant that the glitch would have worked. Now what the full skip looks like is you get hooked on the wall and then you do a submarine jump off like that. So as long as you can get hooked in the wall, this is from the last part. As long as you can get hooked on the wall there, you'll make it across. And hopefully, yeah, that's a consistent way to do it.
This setup was revolutionary. Cortex Power is placed more than halfway into the game, so having the fate of your run be decided by a coin toss more than half an hour in was never good for anyone's motivation. With this perfected setup, you could put all of the faith into your execution and skip the revisit to Cortex Power every time. The next skip might be the most notorious, and it's by far the most difficult. Let's jump all the way back to Island 1 to talk about the 5th level, Upstream. This level requires the orange gem from Generator Room for two purposes. This spot in the middle of the level contains a crate underneath this mossy ramp that can usually only be broken without dying if you have the orange gem platforms beneath it. This crate can be easily obtained anyway through the combination of a sub-jump and invincibility. The bigger issue lies at the end of the level, where two orange gem platforms will carry you past the exit portal to a hidden area with two more crates. Similarly to Cortex Power Skip before it, Upstream Skip had been theorized as far back as June of 2013 by Pirohiko, but it wasn't until 2016 when a real-time viable setup was first theorized by a user named Ersp. Much like Cortex Power, there are spots in this left wall that can be landed on with a spin. Ersp's initial setup involved jumping from the same spot as the crate hidden beneath the mossy ramp, but a much faster setup was eventually discovered by Koji that instead did it from this lily pad at the very end of the level, eliminating the need to break any crates and then backtrack to the ramp. The problem with this skip though is that the lily pad is a timed platform and falls only a few seconds after you land on it. While there are visual cues you can use to line yourself up to land on the wall, you have extremely little time to actually position yourself correctly before the lily pad sinks into the water. Furthermore, even when you do get on top of the wall, there are several spots where you can fall and die anyway if you aren't careful. This skip remains to this day a very difficult and somewhat inconsistent one, and while it is very early into a 100% speedrun, it's generally foregone by all but the most experienced runners. And with that, the number of levels that still require a revisit have been reduced from the original 9 to just 4. Rolling Stones, Native Fortress, Boulder Dash, and Lights Out. The prospect of any of these levels receiving a skip was pretty grim. The most likely contender of the 4 was Rolling Stones, which, like Cortex Power, requires the blue gem from Toxic Waste. This blue gem platform near the end of the level takes you down to a lower area that contains 6 hidden crates. Without the blue gem, this area is surrounded by a death trigger. There was a way to bypass the death trigger and hit the crates by falling in a specific spot in the pit. The problem was, once again, getting back out. Years passed and no progress was made on any potential skips for Rolling Stones or the other 3 levels. It looked like Upstream Skip was the end of the road. On November 3rd, 2022, speedrunner Lucademus shared this video. I'll be honest, I don't entirely understand how this skip works, but with some specific movement, Luca was able to use the geometry of the scenery to force Crash to rise out of the hole. Once at the top, he could simply jump back onto the main level and exit, skipping the revisit. The video I just showed you was done in a task setting, but it wouldn't be more than a few hours later when Luca accomplished it in real time. Not long after, a consistent setup was conceived, and Rolling Stone Skip was born. 6 years had passed since Cortex Power Skip and Upstream Skip had been figured out, and it turned out that Crash 1 still had more to give. With that, the number of level revisits required had been reduced to only 3. As of the time of recording this video, Rolling Stone Skip is the most recent skip to be found. There's been little in the way of progress towards finding a skip for the remaining 3 levels, and while I don't want to say that it's completely out of the question, I would say the chances of a skip being found for any of them is very unlikely. In the case of Native Fortress and Lights Out, their colored gem platforms take you to sections that are very high up into the level, and even if there was a way to get up to those sections without their platforms, a way to load those parts of the levels in would also need to be found. You see, all of the PS1 Crash games load levels in chunks, both to reduce load times and to reduce strain on the console. These load-ins are usually caused by hitting a specific trigger in a level. In the case of a lot of gem paths, the trigger is on touching a gem. If you don't hit that trigger, you can't get the crates because they aren't loaded in. Of the remaining 3 levels, Boulder Dash is the most likely to have a skip discovered, but even then the chances are very low. The purple gem path in this level takes you to a lower portion very far beneath the main level, and this area is absolutely infested with death triggers along the surface. Even if a way was discovered to make it down there without dying, you would once again hit the problem of this lower section not being loaded in. For now, it seems like Rolling Stones might truly be the end of the road in terms of revisit skips in Crash 1, but one of the beautiful things I've learned about speedrunning is that you can never say never. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. I'd love to do more Crash speedrun history videos like this because there's a lot of amazing stories waiting to be told, so be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Very special thanks to Tet W, the current 100% world record holder and a very close friend of mine, for helping me in doing the research for this video. Be sure to give him a follow on Twitch because he's an amazingly talented Crash 1 speedrunner and just an overall amazing dude, so he definitely deserves everyone's support. If you want an even deeper dive into the history of Crash 1 100% speedruns, I would very highly recommend watching The Many Peaks of Crash Bandicoot 100% by Hummeldon. It was made before the discovery of Rolling Stone skip, but it's an absolute masterpiece of a video and I cannot recommend it enough. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. If you'd like to support me, please consider joining my Patreon or following me on Twitch. Every little bit goes a long way in helping me be able to make more content like this. But until next time, thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.